Okay, welcome back to our next lecture. Today, we're going to talk about some of the guidelines for how to get started with the exercises and detox reactions, which can occur. So it's important to kind of be aware of them and kind of how you can appropriately respond when and if they do occur. So let's just jump right into it. So if you're going to get started with this program, there are some things to consider. The first is if you are in your first trimester of pregnancy, I would consider holding off before getting started with any of these exercises, just in case it could cause some issues again with the pregnancy. I would highly suggest, if you plan on starting this, do not start it during your first trimester. Now, if you happen to have high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, type 1 diabetes, kidney disease, depression, cancer, I would start with the more gentle exercises, the gentle reduced breathing exercises. Now, we'll get into which ones those are as we go, but if you happen to fall into one of those categories, essentially we're going to start slow, and it might be worth it to talk to your doctor kind of as we go along, as you make improvements, to see if we need any shifts in terms of medications and stuff like that. Now, of course, I cannot give you a medical advice over this, but what I can say is, as some people have improved using this material, they have had to have consultations with their doctors to maybe lower their dosages on certain things. So it's just something to keep in mind, again, if you're taking medications for any of these, to really kind of be on top of and kind of work in concert with them. So based on kind of the guidelines we're talking about, our exercises are really broken up into two categories. You're going to have exercises 2, 3, and 6, and then exercises 1, 4, and 5. Now, this might not mean too much to you now, but as we go over the exercises, this will make more sense. But basically, they're broken up into two categories. Now, the first category, exercises 2, 3, and 6, those are broken up. They're designed to create a tolerable air hunger that does not induce the involuntary contractions that we talked about. So you're not going to a point where you're feeling that spasming of some of the muscles, or you're not going to be really pushing yourself to your limits, so to speak. These ones, basically, when you discontinue the exercise, when you stop, you're going to go right back into normal breathing, usually without very much, if any, breaths to kind of return to that normal pattern. So this is going to be where you start. These exercises are suited for generally everyone, again, except women who are in their first trimester of pregnancy. Excuse me. Now, the other exercises, exercise 1, exercise 4, and exercise 5, these are intended to create a medium to strong air hunger, and that means the involuntary contractions are going to be present during these exercises. So you may feel spasms in your neck muscles, in your diaphragm, in your belly. Those are kind of part of it. These are meant to kind of push you past the level of the control pause that we talked about. So as the air hunger progresses, as you hold the breath longer, these involuntary contractions are going to become faster and stronger. So, like I said, they can take place in the diaphragm, in the stomach, in the throat. Try to relax through them as best you can when you're kind of doing these exercises, because they can get intense, particularly towards the back end. Now, when you resume breathing, you should be able to bring the breath back under control within 2 to 3 breaths. Now, if you tend to have a really low control pause, it might take you a bit longer, particularly under 12, 13 seconds. It could take you a few more breaths. Again, this is something to kind of really work on kind of as you go, and something to be aware of as you work on these exercises. So, if this is the case, if you have that really low control pause, and we're going to talk about this, further on when we're talking about how to create your own program, you might want to start only with the exercises 2, 3, and 6, where you're only getting a small to medium air hunger and not a large air hunger. So let's talk about detox reactions a bit, or cleansing reactions. Now, remember, there's only 4 ways that you can get rid of toxins in your body, and that is pee, poop, sweat, and the 4th one is breath. In fact, roughly 70% of the toxins in the body get released through breathing. So we have to be able to breathe properly, and we have to be able to utilize diaphragmatic breathing in a way that's going to be helpful for us. Now, what's interesting, and we'll talk about this a little more, is diaphragmatic breathing can actually help work as a pump for the lymphatic system, so we can pump waste, pump those white blood cells, pump our immune system, because it does not rely, it relies on the contraction of our muscles, including our diaphragm, to propel lymph, and not any other system like our circulatory system, for example, that relies on our heart to pump things. So what can happen as you increase your control pause is you may undergo a detox reaction very similar to a Herxheimer reaction you might do if you've ever done, say, like a intestinal cleanse or a parasite cleanse. These things can happen. Now, generally, if the control pause is only increasing 1 to 2 seconds a week, these reactions are unlikely. But if your control pause is increasing at a faster rate than that, it is possible to undergo a detox reaction. Now, when you're practicing proper rhythmic breathing, your diaphragm is going to expand. This relaxes your body, like I was talking about, and it also helps pump our lymphatic system. So the more we get into that healthy, proper rhythm of breathing, the better we are going to be able to pump that lymphatic system. Now, if we're not breathing properly, if we're mouth breathing, if we're not moving on a regular basis, that lymph becomes stagnant and it's going to be harder to eliminate waste. When we have a poorly functioning lymphatic system, this can lead to things like high blood pressure, heart problems, weight gain, fatigue, inflammation. These are all things that we kind of talked about on that first slide when we were talking about what are potential contraindications. So remember, kind of keep that in mind. Now, what is a detox reaction? Basically, it's a temporary aggravation of symptoms. This usually happens, if it's going to happen, within the first few weeks, because that's when the most dramatic changes are going to occur. They're within the first few weeks of starting these exercises. So if it happens, again, it's just the body looking for a way to release all these toxins that it's been trying to get rid of. And now you're basically presenting the body with a way to do it by improving your breathing patterns. Now, some of the top most common symptoms that you may feel if you have a detox or cleansing reaction are something like fatigue, headaches, body aches, nausea, brain fog, irritability, acne or skin irritation. So if you may have a skin irritation or gut issues, they may be slightly worsened for a short time. Again, this is temporary. Loss of appetite, runny nose, or insomnia. These tend to be the more common ones that you would come across. Now, it's important to remember those stronger exercises 1, 4, and 5. These are going to increase the control pause faster. So if you're slowly starting with those gentle reduced breathing exercises, 2, 3, and 6, you're going to have a better time managing detox reactions if and when they do occur. One thing you can do is, again, if these do occur, go down to just using the reduced breathing exercises. Maybe include a little bit of natural sea salt. I like Celtic sea salt with water to help improve mineral content. You may want to use a mineral supplement, but again, this is not medical advice, so consult with your doctor. You also want to increase the amount of foods that you're eating that have high amounts of antioxidants, like fruits and vegetables. Also, spices and herbs are really, really great for this. Now, you might not be suited for stronger breath holds, again, exercises 1, 4, and 5. If you experience migraines, you're susceptible to panic attacks, especially if drowning is a trigger or the idea of drowning is a trigger for you. If you currently have heart abnormalities or recently suffered a heart attack, if you have hypertension, or if your heart rate remains high 5 minutes after measuring your breath holds. So if your heart rate does not come back down to normal within 5 minutes, again, start with those more gentle exercises. So anxiety. So if you happen to suffer from anxiety, you may find it difficult to focus on breathing. Again, maybe creating a stronger breath hold can bring on a feeling of panic. So remember, if your control pause is increasing quickly, a detox reaction may occur. This is a normal thing that can occur. It's just important to remember that your body is reacting to a better environment and is trying to get rid of toxins that it was unable to before. So it's important to keep that in mind. So you also, with anxiety, if you're finding it trouble, if you're having trouble concentrating, you may want to use a distraction, use exercises that use a distraction, like breathing through the nose, the small breath holds, which we'll get to, walking with the mouth closed. Oop. Little typo, but we can fix that. Or relaxation type techniques. And we're going to go over all the exercises, but it's worth it to try them, kind of see how you react, and then adjust what works for you best, so you kind of get an idea. Now, with high blood pressure, during the first week of starting these exercises, it actually may increase. So again, may increase slightly, but you also may feel better. You may sleep better. You may have more energy. It's important that when you consistently exercise, or when you consistently practice these exercises, your blood pressure will begin to come back into normal ranges. So even though you might get a slight increase initially, again, it's an adaptation to a new environment. Once you kind of do this and become more comfortable with it, that's going to begin to normalize. So another good place to start, if this is something that you suffer with, I would stay away from the more intense versions of the steps exercise, which is exercise 5, and the strong breath holds exercises, again, 1, 4, and 5. I would focus on exercises 2, 3, and 6 when getting started, if you happen to have high blood pressure. Now, again, we talked about pregnancy. I would not start this program, and I do not suggest starting this program during your first trimester. If you wanted, you can start to gently introduce these exercises in the second trimester if you wish. I would start with the gentler exercises 2, 3, and 6. You want to make sure that your control pause is not increasing by more than 2 seconds a week. You would really not want to have a detox type reaction, during pregnancy. If you absolutely want to start it, again, start it on the latter half of pregnancy, and only start with the gentle exercises and take it really slow. So, also important that, like, in your day-to-day, that you're not hyperventilating. There we go. You're not hyperventilating, avoiding overeating, avoiding mouth breathing, and avoiding super high stress environments. Now, if you happen to be taking medications, again, this is not medical advice, but this is important for you to kind of keep in mind as you're making improvements, is once you reach your control pause reaches 20 seconds, if you're taking thyroid medications, hypertension medications, diabetes medications, it is highly suggested that you go visit your doctor to see if you potentially need to change the dosage. Maybe you need to get new lab work run. Whatever you need to do, make sure you're working in concert with them so that if you need to change doses, you can. Again, if you happen to have asthma or nasal congestion or other kind of short-term things, worth it to consult with your doctor while you're going through this. Now, if you happen to suffer from asthma, you want to only do the steps exercise, which is exercise 5. Start at 10 steps. Slowly increase the steps 2 steps at a time as you kind of get more comfortable with it. So you go from 10 steps to 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. You want to work to achieve more steps without coughing or wheezing. Also, what is really useful is actually exercise 6, which is many small breath holds. You may need a lot of repetitions of this. So again, practice and consistency is key with it. The more time you put into this, the better results you are going to get. Now, if you have symptoms at the moment, it's going to be difficult to perform the reduced breathing exercises. So if it brings up symptoms, or if you have a very low control pause, these could be issues for you. So use exercise 6, which is many small breaths, or retake the control pause until it reaches 12 seconds. And then you can start reintegrating more of these exercises again. If you happen to have feelings of suffocation, you could consider doing some of the stronger breath hold exercises like exercise 1 and 5, because these can help reset the respiratory centers in the nervous system, in the brain. So, or what you can do, if that seems like a little much, focus on quiet breathing. Again, those are those exercises 2, 3, and 6 for around 30 minutes. And this will help relieve some of that short term. If you feel like you have a stuffy nose at night, start with the unblocking the nose exercise. That's exercise 1. Another thing you might want to do is consider mouth taping. Now, while your mouth is taped, your nose will not completely block. It will not happen. However, if you start breathing through the mouth, your nose can completely block. And your nose will likely continue to block at least until you reach a control pause of at least 20 seconds. So again, using that objective measurement to help kind of guide where you're at. So mouth taping is something that I recommend for most. If you're working with a kid or a child, I would demonstrate it with them and actually have them do the exercises with the mouth tape on while they're awake to kind of get used to it. And even as an adult, a good way to get used to it might be to have the mouth tape on while you're doing something and winding down at the end of the night, whether you're reading or, perhaps watching a movie or TV or something like that, while you're not really doing something that you're exerting a lot of effort as you're winding down, just to kind of get used to it. We'll talk a little bit more about mouth tape in other lectures, but kind of an idea of like where you can use it. If there's a higher level of a clogged nose, we could start with the reduced breathing exercises. I would start with them before bed. So 20 to 30 minutes before bed, start doing some of the exercise 2 variations. Again, we'll go through them. You may want to consider a nasal rinse, and you could do one at home. You can make a saline solution out of just salt and water and use that as a nasal rinse. Again, you may want to consider mouth taping. You may also want to consider using nasal strips to help clear out the nose a bit while you sleep. Again, until your control pause is reaching 20 seconds, these symptoms are likely going to kind of hang around. So measuring the control pause, understanding where you're at, engaging your symptoms kind of all go hand in hand. And then finally, when should you consider an ENT specialist here? So a good way to do this is to use either the steps exercise 6 times or exercise 1, which is the unblocking the nose exercise. Go through doing those. After doing one or the other of those, if you can breathe through your nose, even if it's for a little bit, for 1 minute, and again, you could measure it using a cell phone, using, a stopwatch, whatever you want, you can breathe through the nose for the rest of your life. Now, if you cannot do that for a minute, then it would be time to consider an ENT specialist. So if that's something where you're at, if that's something you want to figure out where you're at, again, go to the exercise lecture. We'll kind of go through all that stuff. Try these exercises. See if you could breathe through the nose, even for a little bit, for a minute. If you can do that, you can breathe through the nose through the rest of your life. It's just going to take some work, and you're in the right place to do it. So we'll be going into some of that in the near future, and I'm excited to kind of go over all of that with you. I will see you guys in the next video.